What if we could end the cartel's reign of terror and related gang violence, minimize loss of life from fentanyl overdoses, and instead put our attention on the heart or the spiritual issues that led to substance abuse in the first place? What if ending prohibition could do this? What if allowing the legal production and sale of such things would accomplish this? Today, in episode 7 of the Just a Thinker podcast, we ask this question: would ending prohibition on narcotics and other currently illegal drugs harm the church? I am your host, Bryan Bootka, and want to ask, do we as believers support public policies that are incongruent with a biblical worldview? And if so, how would we know? How should a biblical worldview inform our approach to criminal justice, education, immigration, prohibition, taxes, and more from a public policy standpoint? We're all capable of thinking critically about these subjects, even if we're not an expert in a specific area, but are we thinking biblically about them? Or is it possible, as believers with a biblical worldview, that we've not fully considered our approach to these subjects in light of how Jesus handled the relevant situations of his day? Should we not at least consider the possibility that our approach is influenced more by the world's norms and ethics than those of Jesus? Is it possible that what Jesus said then could still have a powerful impact upon today's politics in precisely the place where ethics meets public policy and elsewhere? I think so. Let's ask ourselves, what is our end goal that we had in mind with these laws to begin with? Was it to create the cartel and related violence? Was it to increase the tax burden to pay for the militarized police force required to fight off the gangs and the cartel? Was it to see more men in prison for nonviolent offenses? Ending prohibition would neither harm the church nor prevent us from doing the Lord's work in helping those who are affected by drug abuse. Did you know that your medicine cabinet is the greatest gateway drug to heroin and other hard drugs rather than cannabis? Examining national level heroin data from the general population, which includes those in treatment and those not in treatment for some sort of pain-related situation, indicates that 80% of heroin users self-reported using prescription opioids prior to consuming heroin, abusing heroin. And this is according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse in their October 2015 issue. In the New England Journal of Medicine, an article from January 14, 2016, the relationship between prescriptions for opioids and increasing heroin abuse rising in a similar fashion is well documented. This was tracked between 2009 and 2014. No doubt it is worse today. The issue isn't legal or illegal because both are on the rise. If we end prohibition, then crime across the country will be on the increase. This is the sentiment of most, but we don't see that in Colorado long term. After their ending prohibition on cannabis, yes, the number of court filings charging a violation of the Colorado Organization Crime Control Act related to marijuana jumped sharply after their legalization in 2009 from 31 in 2009 to 119 in 2017, but they declined down to 34 instances in 2019, right at the levels of pre-legalization. Is our goal as believers to see people made whole and come to know Jesus, or to merely see that things that separate us from God, sins, made illegal, and to use the state to legislate our morality, freeing us of the burden of being doers of the word versus hearers only? What is our intention behind these laws? If we want to prevent drug abuse in the first place, let's build stronger homes via engaged fathers. Research published in December of 2018, the issue of the International Journal on Childhood Abuse and Neglect, amazing that we have a journal on such a thing, indicated that vulnerability or resilience to early substance use among adolescents is correlated to father involvement. And to quote the research, for every point higher on the quality of a so-called father involvement scale, the odds of early substance use decreased by 6. The quality of father involvement refers to the father's engagement in day-to-day shared activities with the child and the level of closeness, trust, emotional support, and affection in the father-child relationship, the article says. Drug abuse does destroy families. There's zero doubt about that. My father was an alcoholic. He's not. He stopped drinking in his 40s, but it destroyed our family. My mother's second husband abused drugs. It destroyed the family. Our second stepfather doubled down. He abused drugs and alcohol. So I know firsthand the devastation and destruction that abuse of any of these substances can cause on a family. I've experienced it in many ways, but the legality of the drugs never slowed down any of those men from using them. Illegal only moderately impacts demand and supply. We need to be concerned about demand as members of the church if we want to see the kingdom be built here on earth. Crime is a function of fathers' engagement in their sons' lives, not poverty or even drugs. Fathers being engaged with their kids will lower the likelihood of abusing drugs to begin with. Gang violence is almost 100% due to protecting sales territory. Sure, there's probably some low-level street thugs that really are tied to their colors or their gang affiliation, but ultimately, they are managing the marketplace. It is true, some crime very much can be associated with maybe robbing and stealing to pay for their drugs. Ending prohibition would not harm the church, though it would help us in doing the Lord's work by caring for those impacted by drug abuse better. All of us as believers want to see society thrive and avoid the pitfalls of substance abuse. The gateway drug to the worst abuses is in most of our homes today. Check your medicine cabinet for any leftover pain meds from any surgery or injury you might have encountered. Crime may go up slightly if we legalize drugs that are currently prohibited, but it would come down, as we saw in Colorado. There's strong likelihood that nationally we would see it decrease well below prohibition levels because the cartel and gang-related violence would pretty much be eliminated overnight. And if we thought prohibition would truly decrease demand, we should know better because it does not. Laws do not change hearts, and we are in the heart-changing business as believers. This is vital to remember. Making these changes will do the following. It'll reduce crime because the cartels and gangs will no longer have a monopoly on the market, needing to protect it with violence. Making these changes will do the following. It'll reduce crime because gangs and cartels will no longer be protecting their sales territory. They will not be resolving disputes with violence. Because now what will happen is those drugs, we would not only, in this suggestion, this thought experiment, is not only to legalize the consumption of these substances, but to legalize the manufacture, distribution, sale, and consumption, possession of. And what does this do? This ensures that what the person is buying is properly labeled. If they overdose, you can sue them in court instead of having to try to hunt them down and kill them. This is very, very important. It would ensure, as I mentioned, that the substances, they're not adulterated. Right now, the fentanyl overdoses are directly tied to it being illegal. Okay. In 2023, the overdose death rate topped 112,000 in a 12-month period for the first time, according to the CDC. What else will this do? It'll allow those who are struggling to focus on recovery versus going to jail. Again, as a thought experiment, imagine you go to your boss and you tell them you're struggling with alcohol addiction, alcohol abuse. You've not really committed any crimes. You're likely to be encouraged to go get the treatment that you're seeking. But if you do the same thing in terms of going to your boss and saying, I need to get into a treatment center for substance abuse, I need to get into a recovery program, but the thing you're recovering from is heroin, in the state of Texas, at least, you've admitted to a felony. And in many cases, depending on your career, this could be career ending. If you need help and it would end your career, should you still get help? Yes. But as a believer, when we're thinking about the laws we make and the intention behind them, if I'm in the heart-changing business, I really need to think about this. And if you're like me, changing long-held beliefs of this nature, it won't change after one discussion or one podcast, maybe not even after 2 or 3 podcasts or discussions. Like me, it took many years, in this case, maybe more than a decade, of listening to others with different ideas, asking these same kind of questions, reading articles, reading books about this, having discussions. So what I'd ask you to do is think about this, study the idea more, discuss it. Tell me why I am wrong, but do this. Just pray about it. Just think about it. And perhaps in a future episode, we'll do a live call-in where you can tell me why I'm wrong and we can have a discussion about it. Because I think this is one of the most important things we can do as believers, evaluate our long-held beliefs and ask, in America, are we going to use the state to do the church's job? Have we confused what it means to be hearers and doers of the word? And does it absolve us of our responsibility if we just pass a law? Does that make things better? I don't think it does. Because the law might outlaw something, might prohibit something, but that rarely changes demand or supply. It just changes the marketplace. Now, to clarify, I am not suggesting that we allow minors to have heroin or fentanyl or cannabis, any of these drugs. Not at all. When we talk about legalizing things that are currently prohibited, I'm speaking about adults. Do I advocate using illegal substances and abusing these drugs to make our life better? I do not. I do not think being in the drug trade, selling drugs, being in a gang, I don't think any of those are healthy. Clearly, not advocating for that. But as a believer, if I really care about people, those laws, in essence, created the cartel. We explained that in the last episode, that there's a process that when we prohibit something, that rarely changes the demand, and it does change the supply initially. But because people are willing to pay more for the recently banned thing, prices will go up, and that will bring new players, as you will, new businesses into the market. And in this case, because it's illegal, anytime there's a dispute, coercion and force are the only way to resolve it. How would you like to get rid of the cartel? How would you like to get rid of gang violence? These things could be impacted almost immediately if, when we consider eliminating prohibition, we allow the manufacture, distribution, sale, and possession of these things. Again, pray about this. Think about it. Have discussions about it. And we'll have a future call-in show where we could have a one-on-one discussion, if you will. So again, just think about this and pray about it. We look forward to speaking with you next time.